you set this really interesting scene for me when we spoke. You were sitting in a car. What age were you when you were sitting in the car waiting for this call from? Yeah, when you were waiting for this M&A?
I was 25.
Okay, so you were sitting in this car. You were about to talk to this M&A guy from Office Masks.
Correct.
About an acquisition worth
30 million.
Okay, I just want you to step a little bit back and tell us a little bit about your first startup, Slodio, and then kind of work towards that moment and what was going through your mind while you're waiting for that call.
That's a long story. How long do we have?
We have about, yeah.
Okay, 240 characters?
Yeah.
Okay. So Flozio was an idea that I had when I was 22 years old. I wanted to get into business, and I had been in business, but I wanted to finally start my own company, and I decided to jump into the business by raising $1 million at 22 years old. And I did it on a business plan. I had no idea what it took to develop software. I had no idea what it took to really, truly run a company. I ran a company when I was 10 years old. It was a landscaping firm. And my employees at the time were paid on cinnamon toast and silly bands and things like that. So this was a little bit different. People needed checks, and we were dealing with real money. So we built actually a really cool piece of software. We had a great business model, and that was sort of validated by all the contracts that we signed along the way and all the excitement that we got. It was a very unique, disruptive piece of software that was that had very few competitors. We had competitors like any business that says they don't, they're lying. But we definitely had a unique piece of software. So we were in the printing business, and we were taking a certain sector of the printing business onto the web. It's a huge industry, $160 billion a year. Most of it is bought offline. If any of you guys have heard of a company called Vistaprint, they're probably the darling of our industry in terms of showing you that you can take this really old, stodgy business and bring it onto the web. And so we were doing that in a different way, and we picked up a lot of steam. We had an office in India with 40 employees. We had about 10 people over here in Cleveland, and then another office in Chicago. And like I said, we had built a cool piece of software, but it had a lot of faults. The software itself was very janky is probably the best word that I can use to describe it, very broken, but worked enough to kind of get us to the next step. And make a long story short, we started working with Office Max as a customer. And they loved us. They loved our innovative spirit as a company. They certainly loved the uniquity of the software that we had. And by the time we got to the stage where we were in a position to talk to Office Max, we had raised about $5 million. And we did it through continuing to sign more contracts, through, again, just kind of getting to the next milestone. But this was $4 million more than I thought it was going to take to get this company there. And we started the M&A process with Office Max. We were, this is after working 100 hours a week for about 3 years. And we started dating for about 3 months before we really got into the trenches on this M&A deal, and took it right to the top. It was a really exciting process. We were private jetting back and forth to Office Max, meetings with their CEO. They were putting this thing before the board of directors. A lot of just really cool meetings with the M&A team over there. Exciting experience to just be a part of, let alone the exit potential. And make a long story short, we went through the due diligence process 6 days before we were supposed to close that deal, where we kind of had all of our cards on the table and all of our eggs in one basket. As Paul said, I was sitting in my car in Chicago, and I got a phone call from the M&A director, and he said, hey, can I talk to you? And he had another fellow named Dove on the phone who was one of the SVPs over there. And he said, John, just to sort of cut to the chase, we're not going to do this deal. And here are the reasons why. Our code review was terrible. It was like a bloodbath. I remember sitting in this code review as they were, just chewing our dev team apart for all these things. And I'm just, and you kind of knew going into it, they didn't become a $5 billion company without doing a couple things right. So they knew how to develop software just slowly. So they chewed it apart, and there were some other things, and it's a big company. They have, it's not that our deal was necessarily a bad deal, it just wasn't as good as the other, 20 that they were looking at that time, and so they made a decision not to do the deal, said we could come back to the table once we had fixed some of these things that they had outlined. but it was too late. For us, we had raised our money, we had run our run, and that really awesome exit was off the table. We ended up selling the company to our biggest customers, so there was a positive way out for our investors over the long term. But that was a pretty awesome opportunity.
So would crushing be the word, or how did you handle that?
So at that point in time, I almost was afraid to share this story when I first started talking about this, but because I didn't want my investors or the people around me to think I didn't take it seriously. But I was very content with the situation. It had been an incredible journey. I had learned so much, and I told myself along the way, when you're working these 48-hour shifts, not sleeping, when I thought the company was going to die 45 times before we got to this point. So this was 46. That's fine. I can deal with that. You just tell yourself this is a learning experience, and I'll take these lessons and I'll be able to do incredible things. When you're going through failure, which is the topic here, you're learning at an accelerated rate of speed. And I looked at my peers around me who were 25 years old and said, wow, these are not things that they've experienced, and I was very grateful. So I got this call, and I hung up the phone and I looked in the mirror. And I said to myself, John, you're really going to learn from this one. And that was it. It was time to move on to the next, to the next step, get back to work.
So you had two choices. You could be, this is what you said to me before, you could be happy or sad. No, sorry, you could be, you could be happy and encouraged, or sad and depressed. And that was, it's a either or choice that you could make. Most people would be governed by their emotions to bring up those feelings, but you decided to tell yourself that you want to feel a certain way rather than let your emotions go with you.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's the whole idea of the glass half full. I mean, frankly, glass is always full, 50% water, 50% air. Happiness is a choice, and I decided in that moment to be happy, to appreciate the lessons and know that I'm still a young buck and I got a lot ahead of me. There's also offering plates at the end of your tables here. If we could pass those down, make all checks payable to the Gadd Recovery Fund, that'd be fantastic. Thanks so much. So that makes me happy too when you guys reach deep into your pockets and help me walk out of here profitable. Thanks.
So tell me about your new gig, Hot Cards.
Hotcards.com. It's an awesome company, and actually it's an acquisition, and I've known Hot Cards for about 10 years. I got into business when I was right out of high school selling industrial printing equipment. I sold big printing presses and knew nothing about the business, but just took off really quickly. And Hot Cards is one of my biggest customers. They were just growing like crazy. Anybody with a .com attached to their name in the printing business was growing like mad. So make a long story short, I got out of that business and I started Flowsio and another company and stayed friends with the owner. And when I was basically wrapped up Flowsio and just kind of had some consulting going on. I actually went to consult for Office Max for about 8 months after that. Started talking to the guy who owned Hot Cards, and he was ready to check out. I was ready to check in and take a business that he had kind of gotten to, I think his critical mass and take that to the next level. I'll plug it before this thing's over one more time, but we're doing a really incredible event where we're lighting 20 people on fire in the flats, October 19th, to break a Guinness World Record.
You've learned from failure?
Right. So again, the offering plates will be passed around twice tonight.
So what we really want to know is, how did that immense thing affect your abilities now to run Hot Cards?
It certainly made me a better operator. There's no doubt about it. There were things that we did along the way in Flowsio that you just had to learn the first time. You had to learn, when a developer was fooling you. You had to learn that cash actually could run out. You learned the value of revenue and the value of living within your means. And that's been an awesome opportunity, because Hot Cards wasn't a glamorous acquisition. I mean, we've worked really hard over the past year to bring it to where it is. And I think even from the development side of the house to literally just making some profits out of the dollars that were coming in. Flowsio, I on almost a daily basis can think subconsciously and even consciously of an experience I had at Flowsio that has made me not make that same mistake twice at Hot Cards.
Okay, so I'd hate the lesson here to be go screw it up royally, and then you'll have this really great education for your second try, right? Is there something? I know there's something because you told me already. But what are the things that inexperienced entrepreneurs can do now to better prepare them for potential acquisition later? And if you needed to be reminded of what you said, you have to think about synergies and APIs and stuff, right?
Okay, good. Yeah, that's right. That was smart.
It's a good question. Good answer.
All right, so a couple of things that we learned along the way in Flowsio that have been part of the game plan from day one with Hot Cards is to build the company to be acquired. I mean, if that's really truly your goal, then you need to start from day one building the company to be acquired. So Flowsio, we ultimately kind of boiled down the business model into something that could easily be acquired by the big players in the industry. So we didn't have a lot of sort of ancillary businesses or ancillary products or things like that diluted what our real core product was, and that made it easy to tuck in with potential acquirer like OfficeMax, and doing the same thing with Hot Cards. I mean, an acquisition, an IPO. I think for a lot of us, we're not here to build lifestyle businesses. I don't intend to just let this be something that feeds my family. I want it to feed a lot of my employees' families and a lot of my investors' families in a big way someday. And so we built that in mind. The synergies with what you're doing. If you're doing something disruptive and the big guys in the industry that could potentially buy you, don't have that, set out to build that focus on it, get very, very simplistic in your business model, and it just makes the conversation so easy when you start talking to those potential acquirers. Is that it?
From a tech point of view, one big part of the failure was the technology that you had in your first in Flowsio. So you said to me that it works to kind of have that in mind, build technology in a way that can be easily integrated.
Right. Right. So at first it wasn't. We began a big rewrite, but I'm a big proponent of open source and big proponent of strong API libraries. I mean, anymore, you look at Salesforce and all these big companies. I mean, they've built their businesses on letting others play with their technology, play nicely. So building open source and building a piece of software that's not locked down, that could plug into somebody else's platform, is very important for a tech company. I mean, and incredibly important, especially in the B2B industry where we're plugging in to make somebody else's platform stronger is valued.
What does failure look like to you? How deep is it? How hurtful is it? What does it look like to you, and how do you deal with the prospect of failure?
Well, for me personally, failure would be being that sad, depressed guy at the end of this. I mean, you have to set out. If you're going to, look, this is tough stuff. Building a business and being responsible for payroll and feeding people's families and taking investment capital. I mean, it is not the easy way out. So, if you're considering it, then make sure you've thought like 73,000 times about it before you actually do it. But you have to set out with the mindset that if it doesn't work out, it's a lesson learned. If you set out that way, then then you're never afraid of failing. And I think truly that actually ends up making you a little bit more of a risk taker. It makes you do things that you might not have done. I always like the idea of like the childlike faith in just what you're doing, because you stay kind of naive. That whole idea of stay hungry, stay foolish, like Jobs said. But you remain a little bit naive, and you'll take a lot of risks that you wouldn't otherwise take. And you cannot have failure as a negative on your mind when you're doing that stuff. Otherwise, it just won't work.
Okay. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. I got some good ones. This is a good one. How did you inspire your employees to move at light speed to meet your goals?
You make it their business. You have to make it their business. This has to be something that they're invested in. So if you have the ability to do this, stock options, is one component of that. But I kind of feel like my job is, making sure there's money in the bank and motivating people, building that culture. Culture is huge. You gotta first of all hire people who are willing to move at light speed. So define what your mold is from day one, and do not vary outside of it. Every single time I've I've said, maybe I'll let this character trait slide. I get bit, and it's somebody who just does not work out. So define your culture mold and hire towards that, and fire quickly if they're not working out.
How have you been able to get the right people around you to balance your skills and weaknesses?
Well, a lot of that is just hiring slowly and firing quickly. I was not, when I first started my first company, big. I was kind of like a Lone Ranger, and I came to understand the value of having good mentors and good advisors around me, and I started to bring those people in, albeit sort of late in the game with Flowsio. But get the right people, get those advisors, mentors, give back so people are willing to give to you, and all of a sudden you end up finding out that you got a lot of people who are making those connections and those introductions.
From Jeremy, how did you go about acquiring customers when you first launched? I'm not quite sure if you meant the first or second startup, but probably the first.
Yeah, probably the first startup. That was one of the really good things we did with that business model, was we built a software that was meant to be integrated. Again, it wasn't the friendliest integration in our first version, but our model was we would go to existing software platforms and say, look, we're non-threatening. We make your software platform better. Let us plug it in, and we'll give you a revenue share of the dollars that are generated from it. And most people just said, great, that sounds awesome. We're not going to invest in building that feature set out ourselves, and so we'll take it. So anytime we would integrate with somebody, we would automatically get access to all of their customers. We would put together marketing campaigns, a lot of unbranded resources to help them market directly to their customers our product. It was really, like I said, a great business model, and helped us scale up our customer potential very quickly.
Okay, one more. How did you boost company morale after the deal fell through? And I wonder how long the company lasted after the deal fell through.
Yeah, we sold it pretty quickly. We kind of had both running, both tracks running, and so it was only a matter of a couple months after the Office Max deal fell through that we spun it out to our big customer. So there wasn't much, boosting that needed to happen. Luckily, my partner at the time and I had also started a marketing firm, a boutique marketing firm in town. So a good handful of those employees went to work there. Some others, this was kind of their opportunity to move on and do some other stuff anyhow. And then the shop in India, we shut down.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more, because this kind of interests me too. Do you believe building business is a binary choice, where build to sell or build for lifestyle? It's from Morris.
Yes. I mean, I think you can get bought along the way, but I think you have to make a very committed decision to build to sell, or to build IPO, or to build big, versus build something for a lifestyle business. Again, I think you can ultimately exit it, but if you're happy with just building it big enough to feed your family, then I think it's going to be very tough turning into something pretty magnificent.
Okay, thank you very much, John. Round of applause for John Gadd.
Thanks.